Hey, would you like a PDF of all the Old Soul, New Soul podcast episodes since we started the show? Well, it's under the freebies tab on funastrology.com. Go grab yours now. Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller along with Robert Glasscock, realizing that we get some of our best ideas from you when you shoot us some of your questions. And by the way, I want to just mention again our show log that we have available. You can go to funastrology.com under the freebies tab and download that. It's also in the show notes. We have the list of all of the episodes that we've done going all the way back to 2022. Love to put that in your hands so you can peruse that and say, I'd like to listen to that one. So one of the things that somebody asked was about basically the characteristics of the next sign. So you could think about this from any perspective. We're going to start in zodiacal order with Aries, the beginning of the wheel, if you will, and just talk about the characteristics of a sign with the twist of how it's relative to the sign before it. And it's something that I've, in my little even infancy of studying this, realized that there are a lot of contrasts when a planet changes signs. For example, I follow the sky on the daily on the Fun Astrology podcast. And when Venus changes signs, it's a different Venus and the characteristics are different. And that's really what we're going to talk about, is what you can expect in the different signs. So, Robert, this is going to be interesting. Let's start with at least Aries, which begins the wheel, is quite a stark contrast to the sign before it, which is Pisces.
Aries does start everything, but it comes out of Pisces. Pisces dissolves everything. So out of the dissolving of everything comes a new birth, Aries, to start with. Everything in life starts in your head, in your brain, ruled by Aries. Everything starts with an idea. And the next thing to do is to make it concrete in Taurus, an earth sign, to value the idea, to value the concept, which is Taurus, high value. And if you give things value, and Taurus is ruled by Venus, you fall in love with it. And you want to make it real and make it physical and make it happen. And the third thing then, out of Taurus arises Gemini, which involves communicating your idea, your dream, your hope with other people, thinking about it, third house, sharing it, talking about it, taking some concrete action step by step to make it happen. The fourth house becomes the sign of Cancer, arising out of the previous sign Gemini, which is to find the base of whatever the idea is. And this is an emotional house. So by now you've taken what started in Aries and what you've valued and what you've taken steps to develop. If you've taken it this far, you will either abandon it if it's not working out and start something new, or you will now make it permanent part of your, at least for a time, of your existence. You'll make it a part of your family, in other words. You'll protect it. You'll nurture it. You'll do all the Cancerian traits to it. And Cancer is a very fertile sign. So this stage of development becomes that, making an idea or whatever it is that you've begun under Aries, making it a part of your soul, your family, your roots, your base for a time. And then in the fifth house, it transforms from Cancer into Leo, which is a creative sign of new birth, but it's the further development of what began under Aries. So in the fifth house in Leo, the fifth sign, you've got this tremendous burst of creativity, which is also very much about love. Leo is the sign of love and romance, as well as creativity. It's also the fifth house and Leo, and people forget this a lot. It's absolutely about education. Everybody thinks of the ninth house. The ninth house is specialized education, but going to kindergarten through high school is absolutely fifth house. So in this stage of Leo, you're learning and finding more to bring to whatever you began during Aries. In the sixth house, Virgo, you begin to figure out, how is this, can I commodify this? Is this something I can give to the collective in the sense of service? Can I provide something that I think people need out of my own creative ideas and the work that I've done on them? And this phase of development has a lot to do with analysis and self-criticism and refinement and perfection and all of those things. But the idea is to turn that, what started at Aries, into something that you can commodify and give as a service to the collective. And in the seventh house, you begin to enter the public sphere, the public signs above the horizon, the collective signs from Libra through Pisces. So now you begin to work one-on-one in the seventh house in Libra with other people. And certainly that can mean marriage, partnerships, collaboration in business, counseling, consulting, all of those seventh house matters. But it's about how I relate this idea or myself to other people. In the eighth house, because of the collaboration, the joining that happens in the seventh, everything is transformed for both parties. And again, now you have to bring in other people's valuing of what you originally started. In Aries, they will bring their values into what you begin. It's a form of intercourse, if you will, that does transform the whole thing that you originated into something new and different as a result of joining up with other people and accepting their input and working together in jointly held values, which then can proceed into the ninth house, Sagittarius, which is to broadcast what you've developed to the world. And that can be through any number of things: teaching, publishing, mass communications, all of the ninth house things, traveling, international marketing, all of those things. It can be through philosophy, it can be through the law. And so when you get to the 10th house, which is really the apex of the development of what began in Aries. So that the Capricorn house, the Capricorn sign, is taking things to the maximum level of ambition that you have for the project or the idea that you initially developed. And then in the 11th house, taking that to the widest possible audience in the idea of serving humanity. Really, it's a very humanitarian house. So it presupposes an awareness of how is what I came up with originally now valuable to the most people, the people who need it the most. So you become more globally conscious in that way. And finally, in the 12th house, you release it to the world. It's no longer, it doesn't belong to you. It's not in your home anymore where you were working on it originally. Now it belongs to the world. And it has whatever effect it's going to have on the world, and you let it go and you let it dissolve naturally, which leads into Aries again with a new idea. And that, in a nutshell, is kind of the progress through the signs. I don't know if this is what you were looking for, but that's a thumbnail sketch.
I love that thumbnail sketch, and what a great, I hope you guys will write all that down, because there was some fantastic information in there. And it gives you that developmental flow, which we often don't think about. Because, now let me ask this, just kind of the contrast side. A lot of the times, when you move to the next sign, there is a pretty abrupt difference. So let's just take three right here: Gemini, Cancer, and Leo. I mean, think about if you had, for example, kind of the way that this question came to us was, let's say that you had a Gemini sun and a Cancer moon. You know, it's like that is two kind of very different things. And then you move to Leo, and that's a stark contrast to Cancer. And that shows up in just about every sign as you move from one to the other. There's this abrupt shift of energy of the demonstration of that next sign.
You know, they're all really processes, aren't they? So if you wanted to start with Gemini, the theme of Gemini is connectingness. So in the body, Gemini rules all of the limbs, including the legs. Those are specifically ruled by Sagittarius, which is gross motor coordination. Gemini is fine motor coordination. But the limbs, the idea of the arms and hands and legs connecting us with our environment and enable us to pick up objects and to move through our physical environment, all of that is embodied in Gemini of connectingness. Gemini rules every form of transportation: bicycles, cars, skateboards, airplanes, ships, any form of transportation ruled by Gemini. And the third house, so again, connectingness, networking with other people, talking about things, communicating things, sharing ideas, critiquing each other, communications. Communication is a way to connect with other people. You can do it visually through paintings, photography, and so on, audiovisual media. You can do it auditorially through music and so on. But communication and connectingness is very much about Gemini. Taken alone, Gemini could wind up in just a morass of endless communications and networking without ever accomplishing anything. It would constantly be talking and working over ideas and trying this and trying that, and exploring this, exploring that. In Cancer, you have to form an emotional attachment. What you're looking for in Cancer is what gut level. This has nothing to do with logic or reason or intellect at all. It is a gut level emotional response. Does this feel secure to me? Does this feel good to me? Or does this feel upsetting to me? Does this feel anxious to me? Does it feel bad to me? Because in Cancer, what you're looking for is to establish security in something or someone, and to put a protective shell around it, just like a crab does, because this thing, whatever it is sensitive and needs protection against outside elements that inevitably will come along to argue with it or put it down or tear it down or compete with it and so on. So you want to protect it. So the difference between Gemini and air sign all takes place in the head and the intellect. And Cancer, which is the gut level experience. And here in Cancer, we get into the emotional and psychic areas of life. And psychic elements include being aware emotionally and communicatively, really, with pre-physical or non-physical reality. Yeah.
Let's take a current example on this, because right there, I mean, that's excellent. And this is what I do on Fun Astrology, so this would be perfect. We just had, as we're recording this, Venus and Mercury both moved through Gemini and entered Cancer. So why don't we just, as an example, to kind of wrap this up, we'll leave it with this, but it'll give everybody the general idea. Venus in Gemini versus the expression of Venus in Cancer. And let's do the same while we're at it for Mercury, because it rules Gemini, and now it's in a very different space. So I think this will be interesting.
Well, what you're looking at with Venus is basically values. Now, it rules money because money is nothing more than a physicalization of values. Paper money is worthless unless it has some value to it, which the government gives it and we give it. We all agree that a dollar bill is a representative of $1 worth of value. So Venus is values, and when it moves from Gemini into Cancer, it's going from the intellectual air sign qualities into the security area of values. So it's an emotional movement, and so is Mercury. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, and Mercury has a lot to do with intellect and thinking. It is not at home, so to speak, in the water signs, because the water signs are emotional and biochemical, if you will, whereas the air signs are intellectual and electromagnetic. So there's a completely different energy going on with Mercury in Cancer. Mercury in Cancer then will be communicating from an emotional standpoint. Emotional feelings can overwhelm rationality. And yet Mercury goes through Cancer every year, and it's meant to tell you something. It's meant to see if the ideas and communications jibe with feelings. And this includes not only your own personal feelings, but your interactions with other people. So Mercury in Cancer can bring forth a lot of unconscious emotional undertones to whatever is going on in your life, and cause people to say and do and act in ways that are emotional rather than rational. But those are also factors to be concerned, because the emotionality is what gives gut level security or not. And that's what people are really trying to do when they have emotional confrontations. certain things have built up to a pressure point, and now they come out often in heated kind of arguments or discussions or disagreements. The reason for them is to see if the people can resolve these unconscious emotional undercurrents that are going on, and they can if they communicate them, which is very difficult for some people. It also can give rise, Mercury in Cancer can give rise to sudden dreams and hunches and inspirations that are meant to be translated into physical reality in some form. Write them down on paper or on the computer. I love using a lead pencil because it's the old Saturnian element of lead. And when you write down an idea, that is the idea's initial birth into physical reality. It's now on physical paper through the element of lead, which is Saturn. So even though it looks like a two-dimensional piece of paper, microscopically it's three-dimensional, and that's the first birth of an idea into 3 dimensions when you write them down. So Venus is very much at home in Cancer because Venus is values. So it moves from Gemini now into Cancer, where the emotional tone, the emotional side of Venus is reflected in the feeling of, oh, this is good. I love this. This is something I want to protect. I want to keep this. So those are kind of beginnings of a way to look at these transits.
Well, you can see from what you just heard how much depth there is to all of this. So we got a great overview of the developmental process in the chart, which is really something important to keep in mind. And then the sharp contrast when you hop from one county to another. That's what we describe them as in fun astrology, Robert, is county, county line. Hey, we got to make it fun, right? A little bit.
Absolutely.
Thank you for those great thoughts. If you guys now, I know what you're saying, and I know I can hear it in my headphones. What about my Venus? What about my Mercury? Well, we've got several resources for you, and it's all in the show notes. Kristen Lawhead is running our Discord channel, and there's a free conversation over there, so you can go in and ask questions. And then, if you would like to hear the master talk about your Venus and your Mercury, his contact information is in the show notes for readings. We'd love it if you'd leave a great Apple review of the podcast, download that show log that we talked about, and we will see you next time on Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast with Robert Glasscock. Thanks for listening.